WTBQ.
Good afternoon. I'm Tony Abbatine, and welcome to Game On. Is playing college sports an option for your middle school or high school child? How difficult is it to get that academic or athletic scholarship? Today's show, we're going to talk about some of the classic mistakes, but more importantly, some of the key strategies and some of the success stories that families and student athletes around the country have used in order to give their son or daughter an opportunity to play beyond high school. And this far reaches past baseball or softball, the information that we're going to be talking about today, and some of the expert advice that we've used over the years that we're going to be sharing. This is about lacrosse, ice hockey, you name it. Anytime that your son or daughter thinks that they might want to play outside of high school, the whole college selection process, if you think about it, is probably one of the biggest decisions that your child will make. Yes, you can transfer. There's always a new decision, but certainly picking the right school that academically and athletically your son or daughter can play in is a tremendously important decision. And let's just talk a little bit about the landscape. I mean, the amount of choices, and when people talk about the NCAA, what exactly does that mean, and the different divisions that go on. We could talk for an hour about the different levels at the NCAA level, which is really the governing body for collegiate sports. You've got Division I. Typically, when you watch Michigan, Penn State, Alabama, the big universities are typically classified as Division I. You have approximately 300 Division I programs around the country. Division II, you're at about 294. The Division III level, where the level of athletics might not be as high, I think last year you had close to 444. Then you go down to what's called the NAIA schools, which are still four-year colleges, and then you have the junior colleges. There's over 503 junior colleges across the country. So certainly the decision and the choices are massive, and sometimes becomes very overwhelming. One of the questions that we're asked quite a bit, and we run a program for the last probably 10 years, our college-bound program, and this has been geared for baseball and softball, and just recently we're actually helping football players really understand the whole process. When does all this start? And one of the classic mistakes, and I think we can start with that, is parents start too late. The fact that your son or daughter is in 11th grade, most likely you're going to really have to accelerate the process and move very quickly. And typically, 8th and 9th grade is really the first time to start. And you might say, well, 8th or 9th grade, my son or daughter probably doesn't even know what they want to study beyond high school. We understand that. And they certainly, at that point, don't even have a realistic skills assessment. But understand the following, parents and coaches. At the NCAA Division I and II level, you have something called the clearinghouse. And the grades, and not only the grades, but the classes that your ninth grader is taking at Warwick Valley High School or in Shenandoah High School or in San Diego, it's irrelevant. They better make sure that they're taking the required and the type of English classes and math classes that at some point, when their transcripts are being sent to a college university, are in compliance with NCAA rules. So in the event there's an inkling that your son or daughter who happens to be a good athlete in Little League, has played at the middle school level, you need to make sure that the classes that they're signing up for as a ninth grader are in line with them playing in college. So the process does start a lot sooner than you think. It's interesting because the other component of this, your son's in high school, your daughter's in high school, is pursuing a college sport the right decision? And this is where you need to sit down with your child and really make them understand, and for them to convince you, why do they want to do this? Do they want to play because they have the passion to play at a competitive level? It certainly, all the research says that it certainly will enhance their overall college experience. Are some of them going to college to better prepare for professional sports? Being part of a peer group that shares a common interest, that certainly is a comfort factor when you're sending your son or daughter away. Getting college paid for to the extent that an athletic scholarship is a possibility. A great fitness regimen. We certainly know that those that participate in intercollegiate sports are going to be physically fit based on the requirements of the sport. And quite frankly, how about just simply bragging rights or just simply the ego factor? The fact that they can say 5 or 6 years down the road or while they're going to college, I'm a student athlete, I play college sports. I mean, so there's a lot of factors involved in why. And understand that once they do decide to go to school, and I know I sound like the father dad on this one, but it's academics first. And one of the things that when we're counseling families, the big question is, if we think that we've got the right school for their child, will your son or daughter be happy and fit in well at that school, even if they didn't play another sport? That's really a great final question to ask. That whether it's injury, academically ineligible, performance issues, would your child still be happy and fit in well at this school, even if they didn't play other sport? And what I've seen over the years, quite frankly, are some bad decisions made by parents and even the players, that the first school that shows a level of interest, that's the school my son or daughter wants to go for. And I think that's kind of a shotgun approach to the whole process. Yes, it is great that a school wants your son or daughter to go there, and everyone likes to feel wanted. But at some point, have you done the analysis as in, is this a school that my son can play in, my daughter can play in, and all of the other components of the right choice? Let's talk about, I think, the other component of this whole college selection process, and that's understanding ability and skill level. Because if you're going to, at some point, play in a sport, you've got to determine your talent level. The determining your academic level is a function of SATs, ACTs, and your grades. At some point, your talent level, right, what your requisite skills are, will be a big determinant in whether you can play at the Division I level, the Division II level, and all the way down the college food chain. This becomes a very difficult thing because one of the classic mistakes, and I've identified the top 10, I know when we bring parents in and players for our info nights and we go over the top 10, overestimate your ability. And this becomes challenging because a child that was a Little League All-Star, that was a true superstar at the junior varsity level, and maybe was a star even at the varsity level, there's many times a perception that this person is going to be the best of the best when they're compared to other children across the country. And here's the first component of advice. If your son or daughter, if you think that they're pretty good, you need to kind of step outside your zip code, as we call it, and go and participate in events, whether it's tournaments or camps or clinics, where you and your child can watch other, let's say, 14 or 15-year-olds playing that same sport and compare the skill level. If after leaving your zip code and you're still finding out that your son or daughter are still one of the best, then you might not be one of the families that are overestimating ability. But I think sometimes when we meet families on the end of the process, by the time they're juniors and seniors, and we ask them, have you gone and looked to see what a typical 16 or 17-year-old lacrosse or soccer player does in the way of skill? Their answer typically is no. They're basing it simply on the fact that they were the best in that particular school. And taking nothing away from the accolades at the high school level, you just have to make sure and make sure that the players understand that they're going to be evaluated and they're competing against the best players from every other high school. That if you're going to play at the Division I and II level, every player that's either trying out or competing for an athletic scholarship most likely were the best of the best. So getting outside the zip code, as we call it, is a great way, even as a 9th or 10th grader, is just to start getting some good perspective on, how good your son or daughter might be. Talking to your high school coach, and even talking to your AAU or travel teams. The college recruiting landscape has changed tremendously in the last 2 decades with the proliferation of travel teams and AAU. Back in the days in the 70s, it was play high school sports, and hope that you'd be found. Now with all the different opportunities that good student athletes have to play literally all year round, you're finding more exposure and more opportunities typically when your child is playing on their AAU or club or travel program. But again, as a parent, you need to ask the coach, both at the high school level and even at the travel level, how many varsity athletes playing the sport at your school have gone on to play Division I or II? That's a great starting point. If you believe that your son or daughter has a chance to be the best of the best, but in talking to either the high school coach or the athletic director, and no one in the last 15 years from your high school has had an opportunity to play there, you need to be realistic. How many varsity athletes playing the sport that you're playing in your conference have gone on to play Division I, II, and III? And really the last component, then ask your child's AAU or travel or club coach really the same questions. And if it's constantly coming back, none, Division III, you as a parent need to, at some point, either come to terms that you've overestimated your son or daughter's ability, or need to go out and maybe get another assessment, because you might have a special one. And this certainly is not to discourage any of the players that are out there that are playing in a high school program who have not recently graduated someone into a Division I program. But if it's something that hasn't been done in quite some time, this is where getting outside your zip code and participating in bigger events where you get not only a better perspective, but you'll probably have college coaches there, becomes, I think, much more realistic and gives you as a parent the opportunity to make sure that you're not chasing the dream, as I call it, and you are being extremely realistic. The other classic mistake, think athletics first. And, for all of the dollars that we see parents spend for private instruction and whatnot, I wish there was a magic formula, but I wish that every parent that spends money on baseball and pitching and soccer instruction spent the same amount of dollar on a private tutor. Because at some point, and we'll talk about it later on in the show, your son or daughter has a better chance of getting an academic scholarship, or they have a better chance of getting into some programs where there might be some athletic dollars if they had better grades. And the getting better grades talk that you're going to have with your son or daughter, that can't happen by the time they're a junior, because their grades as soon as they enter high school are just as important as their high school senior grades. And if you really want to rewind, their study habits and the fact that they hopefully are making honor roll or high honor roll at the middle school level typically is an indication that they're on the right track. So if you've got a child who's in 7th or 8th grade and they're struggling or they're in that C range, you need to very quickly change that so by the time they do get to high school, they're going to better themselves. And again, the dollars that families spend, and I know that's a personal decision that go on, but think about it. Every time that you're going to send your son or daughter to camp or buy that $400 bat or $350 glove or the soccer goals in the backyard or the football helmet that costs $200, think about spending some money on tutor. Right? Because at the end of the day, that might be a better investment in giving your son or daughter an opportunity to not only play, but actually save you dollars in the way of college. And those of you that are parents know the sticker shock in sending your child to school. Last I looked, I have a 12 and a 13-year-old, and if I was going to send both of them to school in a private institution, you're looking at about $250,000 each, 7 or 8 years from now. That's a number that is mind-boggling. And as much as all of us as families try to squirrel some dollars away, most families don't have $500,000 sitting in that child's account to be able to afford something like that. And maybe it's not private school, maybe it's public school. And there are other ways certainly to reduce college expenses, whether it's grants, whether it's student loans, and there's a variety of different things. But the fact that it's so expensive, as a parent, understand that the academic dollars, and when people talk scholarships many times, there's a lot of confusion even about that. look at it as a kind of a three-headed monkey. You've got athletic dollars, you've got academic dollars based on good grades, based on SAT scores, community service. I mean, just a special student having nothing to do with their athletic ability. And then you've got financial aid or need-based, based upon your federal income taxes, your net worth. I mean, there's all kinds of formulas that both at the state and the federal level go on. But those are the three ways in which you're going to offset this cost factor. If you think athletics first as one of our classic mistakes, you're selling yourself short, because at some point, let's assume that your son wants to go to a school, excuse me, and the grades were so bad, or they weren't up to a point where that college coach could not have offered some athletic scholarships, and at the same time offered another $5,000 or $10,000 a year for some academic dollars. So don't look athletics first, and this gets back to the first school that likes your son or daughter as an athlete might not be the best program for them, because, and we'll talk about the analysis as to what should go on as your son or daughter who's really as a sophomore and junior, when they need to start at least identifying, what part of the country do I want to go to? Do I want to go to a big school? Do I want to go to little school? How important is it to have a foreign exchange program? Do I want to study overseas? These are all components that they at least need to start thinking about, knowing that they probably don't know what they want to study. I mean, think about how many times, you start going to school and you decide for some reason that's not what I want. Yours truly started at the University of Buffalo, and I swore I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. I studied medical technology. And a year into it, I punched myself in the face and said, there's no way, okay? And as much as people were telling me that being an anesthesiologist would make a lot of money, I saw the course load, and I saw all of the type of people that were in the classes, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go easy. I'm going to just study sociology, have a big fat grade point average, and then go apply and get into law school. So your child is not going to know what they're going to study, but not thinking athletics first sometimes becomes a big component. We're going through the biggest decision that parents will be making with their son or daughters, the whole college selection process. Hi, I'm Tony Abbatine from Game On, and we're continuing our dialogue on the whole scary college selection process. Mom and Dad, it's going to happen a lot sooner than you think. How quickly our children grow up. Right before our eyes, they go from kindergarten to middle school, and we blink again, and all of a sudden they're these proud little freshmen in high school, and we blink again, and they're sitting in their graduation robes getting ready to tackle on the real world. It happens so quickly, and as it relates to making sure that they're making good decisions to better prepare them for life, to go on to school, how do we at least start the process early and feel good that we're making some good decisions to give our children the best opportunity to not only play in college, but to participate academically in schools that are going to make sense. Mentioned before on the classic mistakes and the starting the process very late. If I had to identify out of the 10 of our classic mistakes, this might be one of them that we have an opportunity to meet families sometimes that their son or daughter are juniors, and they now realize that there were so many things that could have or should have been done prior to that to make this whole process a little bit more friendly. The best advice that I can give, not only start early, but in the age of the internet, there are so many more opportunities to visit campuses by virtual reality. You can start at least looking and having your son or daughter look at different schools that are going on, or at least have those conversations with them by the time probably they're in 9th or 10th grade. And what are some of the variables that at some point they're going to find important? And yes, we know that the formal college application won't be filed until sometime late into the junior year, early in the senior year in the fall, but the size of the school. These are factors that you need to start at least having discussions with way before the senior year. Religious affiliation. Is it important for you to go to Boston College or Notre Dame? The social life. Does your son or daughter need to be near New York City and the limelight of Broadway? Region of the country. There are some children that want to be closer to home. There are some that want to go to the Sunbelt state. There are some that want to get as far away from their mom and dad as possible. Reputation of the college. At some point, having that degree and your ability to get a job becomes a critical. On the athletic side, playing time. If your child really needs to play and will just be miserable sitting on the bench for the first year, they might have to decide that a Division II or even a Division III level might make sense. Chance of playing multiple sport, is that going to be a factor? How important is it to have a scholarship, both from an ego standpoint and from a financial aid standpoint? How important is it that you get along with a coach? And certainly that's going to be a big factor, but understand that coach that recruited you in the first year might not even be around in the third or the fourth year. Your ability to possibly play multiple positions. If you're a softball player or a baseball player, going to this school, will that particular coach allow you to be a designated hitter when you're not pitching? Or will that coach allow you to play the outfield at times when you're not playing third base? These are all things that you need to sit down and your child needs to start at least what is important. I know when someone comes to us in our college-bound program, we sit down with them, we actually force them in writing to put answers to some of the questions that we're sharing today. And it's really the first time, we call it the initial priority list. What's going to be important in that whole college selection process? How about the student rating themselves? This becomes important. And again, as if you were a college coach who had the opportunity to scout your games, we ask the student athlete to rate themselves. How good is your work ethic? How good is your attitude, coachability? How good are your leadership skills? How good are you at handling failure? How good is your overall skill level, your passion for the sport, your body language, your confidence? Are you a team player, or is it kind of a me-first mindset that you have? These are all things that at some point the college coaches will be watching and talking to your young student athlete about. And it's important at that 9th and 10th grade level to have your child answering some of these questions. So this whole thing about, well, I'll start this whole process late. When in doubt, do it earlier. And again, I think parents get confused when we suggest, and you'll hear guidance counselors suggested, and even their high school coach or their travel coaches, hey, got to start the process early. It doesn't mean that your son or daughter knows that she wants to go and study economics at Manhattan College. That's not what starting the process first is all about. Think about it. Starting it early means a bigger commitment to academics, knowing that your 9th and 10th grade grades are going to be just as important, as we mentioned before, as your junior and senior year. And the fact that this is a big decision, giving your child an opportunity to visit both online and over the course of his sophomore and even junior year and even his freshman year, go visit a campus. It's amazing the amount of decisions that are made by some parents and their children, obviously, on going to a school that they've either only visited once or they've never visited before, because the school happened to have seen them at an event and there's been overtures made to the child by the coach. All of a sudden, this becomes one of their top 10 schools. You need to bring your child onto a college campus and see if she or he likes the big universities, the smaller Ivy League mindset. Do you want the metropolitan type campus versus a Storrs, Connecticut, where the University of Connecticut is, where you're in the middle of cow pastures? These are all things that can and should be done way before heading into your junior and senior year, when at that point you're really identifying and targeting the 8 or 10 schools that you believe, and if you are getting some help, other people are suggesting that are going to fit your academic and athletic level. The amount of recruiting services, and I have to say this, and yes, our college-bound program is a service. We charge a fee for the families that want to participate in this program. Our information nights that we offer all across the country are free. And if a parent took really good notes during the info night, they probably wouldn't have to sign up for the program. I hate to say that, although I think there are some variables involved. But it amazes me. We had a parent come in the other day into our New York location. They paid $750 for an online college recruiting service. They paid a computer, $750, and in that, you were given a database of every college program in the country, and part of this service, you had someone that you'll never meet before, someone who's never even evaluated your son or daughter's skill level. They're going to shotgun that resume around the country, and they call that college recruiting. And when the parent came in and asked if this was something that made sense, very politely, I said, well, it's $750, which to you might not be a lot of money, but for some, that's a tremendous investment. And my answer to her, someone who's been doing this for over 25 years in the areas of softball and baseball, college coaches and the admissions people aren't looking at resumes that are shotgunned around the country. And if you're having someone speak on your son or daughter's behalf that has never seen their athletic skills, that's a major red flag. I mean, so those of you that might find something inexpensive, or I signed up for this program and they're going to make a video, or I'm going to send a video to this service so they can promote it online, you have to be very careful with that, because the initial assessment of how good your son or daughter might be will be their athletic skills. And you have to be very careful as to who is promoting or who is at least introducing your son or daughter to the program. We mentioned before, I think when some of the college coaches were on, about the role of the parents. The parents have a tremendous amount of influence, and they are a big part of this process. They're involved in the grades. They're involved in making sure that academically the courses that are being registered for are going to be in compliance with NCAA rules. They're going to give their son or daughter a great opportunity to better their skills. But the one thing that the parents need to back out of is promoting and self-promoting and telling all the college coaches how wonderful their son or daughter is. And even though you might be correct, the best advice that we give parents, let other people tell people how good your child is, because there's a built-in bias to you. And the amount of college coaches that have told us, Tony, man, we had this crazy mom call the other day. She mentioned your name, so we kind of talked to her, and she spent 20 minutes telling me how wonderful her daughter was. And I have to apologize, as we typically do, and then I get back on the phone and talk to the parent and say, look, we know how proud you are of your daughter. She's a wonderful player, but college coaches think that you're full of you-know-what. So stop calling them and telling them how wonderful they are. And so along those lines, really, if you think about it, statistics. As much as we think that statistics are important in the whole process, I don't want to say they're of no use, but they're of no use. Because the problem is hitting 450 in Orange County, New York, versus hitting 450 in Orange County, California, there's way too many variables, especially in softball and baseball. Who's keeping score, the level of play, the quality of pitching that's going on, and college coaches will be less inclined to look at statistics than you would think. And even though they'll ask for it at some point, because typically they'll ask for it as a function of playing time. If your son is recording 85 innings a year, which would be a lot for a high school pitcher, that's an indication that he's playing a lot, and he's probably the best pitcher on the team. But to give over credence to a 1.2 earned run average, or your daughter who's pitching in softball is 10-0, it's really going to mean not as much as you think. And not to get deep into softball and baseball, but particularly in pitching. And we heard John Tominia from the Chicago White Sox talk about it, Laura Taylor from Jacksonville University. The first and only thing that they want to hear, how fast? How fast does your son or daughter throw? That's the beginning of I'm somewhat interested. The fact that they were 5-3 or struck out 115 girls in the area of the country that they played in will be less of an issue. So let's just make sure relying on simply high school performance alone is not going to be enough for you to make some good choices. And this is where parents get very frustrated with us. But Tony, my daughter was a 4-time All-Star, Times High record, 3-time Player of the Year. She was the captain of the team. What do you mean she's a Division III player? Well, right now, where her skills are, compared to all the other girls that want to play, that's where she is at this point. And understand just simply in percentages, right? The percentage of high school senior athletes who will make a college team. You ready for these numbers? Men's basketball, 3%. If you have a daughter who would like to possibly play women's basketball, 3.3% of high school senior athletes who will make that particular team. This doesn't include the junior colleges and the NAIA schools. This is Division 1, 2, or 3. How about football, right? You're someone who's been a great high school football player. You've got a 5.7% chance of playing college football after graduating high school. Baseball, 6.1%. It gets more in your favor. Ice hockey, 11%, which really means that, let's use ice hockey for an example. You've got 1 out of every maybe 10 players on that ice hockey team will participate in college sports. Soccer, 5.5%. These are all percentages based upon the NCAA and their annual reporting. Now, this shouldn't mean that you give up your hopes of playing college sports, because there is a college program for every single player out there. And I'll say that again, if you truly want to play college sports at some level, you'll find someone, right? There is no question. It might not be the school that you wanted to play at. If you're a football player, you might not play at Alabama or Penn State or Michigan. But if you wanted to play at a Division III program, it gets back to continuing improving your skills, having good grades, and then being realistic. And so when you see these staggering numbers that are in single digits, the chances of someone playing college basketball after high school is 3%. It means that so many people either gave up or thought that they couldn't even find a program. So the numbers are incredibly low, but this gets back to a sense of realism and knowing that most players, as they go on to play after high school, are going to play at the Division II, Division III level. I mean, that's really the reality of the skills. The reason why Division I's have most of the scholarships is because the better athletes are going to go there. And we mentioned scholarships before, and I hear this all the time, at parties or whatnot, that my daughter or son got a 4-year full ride. The next time you as a parent hear 4-year full ride, cry uncle, because again, that's not accurate. In college sports, they are only allowed to offer a 1-year scholarship. And there is no such thing as full ride. Even the college basketball and college football, which are the big money revenue producing sports on campus, they don't even have a full ride. When people hear full ride, maybe it's full tuition, that you might have had an opportunity at the Division I or II level to get your tuition paid for. But this nonsense, and you read it in the papers, I think it's more the parents. I think kids are realistic. I think parents are more full of you-know-what than the kids are, that it becomes bragging rights when they're sitting at the soccer game or the Little League game or at the cocktail party to be able to say, my son or daughter has a 4-year scholarship somewhere. I think the nice thing about the fact that it's renewable 1-year contracts, and that's really what these scholarships are all about. If you remain eligible, if you are a good teammate, that program has the opportunity to continue to your scholarship. But make no mistake about it, you coming in as a freshman and you're a jerk, you miss school, your grades aren't very good, that particular program has the absolute right to say no, and you will lose your scholarship years 2, 3, and 4. Conversely, you come in as a walk-on, and for some reason, the college program discovered you late. You were a late bloomer. The first time that you got into the weight room was when you got to college, and all of a sudden your skills are better. There's nothing that prevents that college program from offering you an academic or athletic scholarship in years 2, 3, or 4. So let's understand this whole full year or full ride scholarships. It really doesn't exist. Mentioned before about some of the classic mistakes, and this is something that we have to battle all the time. Someone goes to a college camp or a college clinic, or they're on a travel team, and the rosters of that travel team somehow got in the hands of a college coach or whatnot, and little Johnny or little Jane, they get an email, they get an invitation to show up to a college camp. And they bring it into us, and the mom says, look, my daughter is getting recruited to go to Syracuse University, Tony. And very nicely, we look at the email, And when it says "Dear Player," that's typically an indication that it's not personal, that same letter that was sent to this very excited little girl was sent to about 500 other girls in an effort to get all of those girls to show up to a camp at Syracuse University. And we're not condemning college baseball or softball programs in offering camps, which are a big part of their money-making component. But when you do participate in a camp or a clinic, or if your son or daughter is invited to one, that's not being recruited. Now, how do you know if your son or daughter is being recruited? Here's some great advice. If you're talking to a coach, or even if you receive some type of email or direct mail, pick up the phone, get either the head coach on the phone, and be persistent about this. I think the one thing that we are constantly telling parents, you don't want to be crazy and call 15 times a day, but sometimes the squeaky wheel gets most of the proverbial oil. Go ahead and make a phone call and find out. And if your son or daughter is a junior or senior, great advice. They need to make the call. It amazes me how many parents, when we sit down with the student athlete and we'll go through, you need to go online and register as a prospective student athlete. And this is something that if you've got a son or daughter that's in 7th or 8th grade, and they think they want to play basketball or football, they can go online at any point, and since every college sports program and team has their own individual website, they can enroll very quickly and get into the database of Penn State University baseball or University of Miami football and just simply register as a prospective student athlete. It'll take them 2 minutes to go online. They'll create some information, and immediately now your son or daughter's name is in that system. That's a great thing to do as an 8th or 9th grader. It doesn't cost anything, doesn't mean that you're committed. You'll continuously now get information about their camps and their clinics or whatnot. But as your son or daughter eventually gets into high school, you need to ask the college coach, is my son someone who's going to be recruited to play here? You need to ask that tough question, because many parents are afraid for two reasons. They're afraid of the answer, and some parents, I think, are so overwhelmed and just simply don't think it's appropriate to be talking to college coaches that way. But that's how you can find out if your son or daughter, and the example that we were using at Syracuse University, Wally King, who's actually the associate head coach at Syracuse University, who was down in Chester, New York a few weeks ago, actually dined at Fratello's. Those of you in the Warwick area, when you walk into Fratello's now, you'll see a Syracuse University football helmet that Wally King was nice enough to bring over to the owner of Fratello's there. And Wally was in town, and there were some girls that participated in a workout at Frozen Ropes in Chester. And a few of the girls walked over because they heard me tell them to say that. Coach King, am I somebody who would be recruited to go to Syracuse University? And Wally King, who's one of the good guys in college coaching, very nicely and certainly without deflating the egos of these girls or really crushing their feelings, he told 4 out of the 5 of them no, that they had great skills, that where they are right now and their present skill level wasn't enough to be recruited to play at Syracuse. It didn't mean that they couldn't walk on, didn't mean that a year from now they could possibly be better, but at least he was honest enough and let the girls know that right now the answer would be no. And I think that's something that parents, certainly when you're maybe the first time that your child is talking to a coach, maybe you can ask that question, but at some point you should have your child ask that question, whether it's in an email or whether it's on the phone. Am I being recruited? And if the answer is no, that you simply are getting these emails or letters because we want you to come to a camp and pay $75, I think that's when you can start assessing this is not a good fit. Syracuse University might not make any sense because I got the same email that everyone else did. And when I asked that tough question, the coach was nice enough to say no. And again, you'll see a different mix. We had Tim Walton from the University of Florida and Laura Taylor from Jacksonville University. I mean, notwithstanding that they're personal friends of mine, these are good people. These are people that are going to be honest. The last thing they're going to do is build up expectations. To have somebody go down to Jacksonville or Florida and it's not a good fit, no one wants that to happen. So the parents need to take the initiative And once that college coach has seen your son or daughter play, you ask that tough question. And you might not like the answer, but at least you're not setting yourself up for some major disappointment by the time they're a senior when you start identifying the 8 to 10 schools that might be a good fit. So your child's in 3rd grade. It's almost time to be thinking about going to college. Could you imagine that? This is a crazy world that we live in now. We actually had a parent of a 5th grader who was at one of our college-bound info nights a few months ago, and credit to her for listening to the advice that we give all the time about starting early. But we knew it was a problem that she actually brought the child with her, and the 5th grader needed to be in bed by 8:30, and the college info night was at 9 o'clock, so they had to leave because the little one was getting tired. But you need to start the process early. We mentioned that before. Again, at some point, the failure to ignore some of the other programs. We'll see this at times where, and again, where children are seen, where the high school student athletes are seen many times, and again, the landscape has changed with all of these travel teams and the showcases and the tournaments, and parents can go broke with the amount of opportunities that they have, and you need to assess each one of them. I know we'll run, in fact, this weekend we actually have a college show camp in Orange County. We've invited 5 colleges to be in Chester, New York, on the softball side, and the college softball coaches will be teaching, and at the same time we'll be watching the skill levels of certain players. The best advice that we give to parents that are thinking about enrolling their child is, well, first off, the 5 schools that are attending, if they have no interest at all in going to school at MIT, at Drexel, University of Hartford, Pennsylvania, or Pace, don't waste your money. If those are schools that, in the limited research that your daughter has made, and they happen to possibly offer physical therapy or chemistry or engineering, then you know what? The $75 that we're charging to be there for the afternoon, it might make sense. So now, for the first time, that college coach can see your daughter play. What it does also, and we mentioned before, it gives perspective. And even though I know we'll have some 8th and 9th graders that'll be working out at the event this weekend, the nice thing about that is that these are typically girls that are pretty good, that they've been the best players on their modified or JV level. Now, for the first time, they're standing on the field with girls from 4 different states. And what it does, it authenticates either how good they really are, or sometimes it's a bit of a motivation to get them to realize, wow, there's about 20 girls better than me out there. I need to go back into my zip code, as we call it, and improve. So it does make sense. I know the different travel programs that are out there, going to different showcases or whatnot, but as a parent, and there's no guarantees typically at tournaments or showcases, will the actual colleges be there? And, you know, the same way we'll run a big showcase in the summertime, right? We can only invite college coaches. You can't get them to commit to come in, but as a parent, do some due diligence. Find out if, hey, the year before, how many college coaches were there and which ones were they? If those are schools that academically and athletically might be a good fit, then you know what? It might make sense to show up to the event. The other thing that really over the last few years has been tremendous is the amount of college camps that are run in the summertime and even in the fall. And again, this isn't about thinking that, well, you know what, I'm going to go sign up for Tim Walton's program at the University of Florida and look to get recruited. But let me go to a campus like that I might want to go to. At the same time, if you think that your skill sets, and using the University of Florida certainly is the pie in the sky, you're talking the best program in the country, but let's use Marist College. No offense to Joe Asanio, our friend who's the head softball coach there, but Marist is not Florida. I think even Joe would admit that. Find out when their camp is and get an opportunity to go live and in person with Joe Asanio from Marist and his coaching staff. That's a good allocation of dollars and time. And so when you're putting together that list, and I know our recommendation by the time applications are going out, because applications are now very expensive, we believe that targeting 8 to 10 schools make the most sense. That with the help of your guidance counselor, certainly having input from your high school coach. 8 to 10 means that you've done some research by the time you're a senior, that you've narrowed down where do you want to go to school, the possible things that you might want to study, and your assessment of your skills is somewhat realistic. You know for a fact, and you've heard it from credible people in the industry, that you're a Division III player, and that's where you're going to have the best opportunity to play as a freshman. Doesn't mean you couldn't play at the Division II level. It certainly doesn't preclude you from walking on at a Division I school, but you've decided in talking to your mom and dad that playing immediately is something that you want to do. So you've decided that the Division III level makes the most sense. At that point, that's when, and the whole videos, you'll see videos all the time now. We had a family walk in and ask about, we put a video together for our daughter. She's in 9th grade and it's up on YouTube. Was that a good thing to do? No. Here's why. And the only question I had to ask was, you think your daughter will get better from 9th grade to her junior year? Well, of course. Well, why would you possibly put a video up? Because as we all know, you have one chance to make a first impression. And even though you'll have the graduation year there of 2015, and the parent says, well, she's only a freshman, it doesn't matter. Because when college coaches are assessing skill, they're looking at it like this. Is that person I'm looking at right here as good as some of the girls that I have in the program or better? Right? They're not in the business many times of projecting. They have to be wanting to recruit your son or daughter because they're better than what they have. That's how successful college programs work. So the fact that you decided to jump the gun or paid for a recruiting service that convinced you to put a skills video up in 9th grade makes no sense. And as we said before, be careful putting these videos online or even on Facebook or whatnot, because where is it going? If eventually you're going to target 8 to 10 schools, why are you blasting that all over the universe via the email or Facebook or whatnot? Would it make more sense to create this video once your skills have been identified and assessed by a professional, not your mom and dad, and whether you're getting professional instruction or training, or you've gone to camps where they can assess your skills and you're very self-motivated and you're working hard and you're getting better, then put that video up. And if you really have, the parents that have listened to the last hour, now I've created a skill video. Let's now go and introduce my son or daughter to 8 or 10 schools that we think, and this gets back to the classic phrase, are a good academic and athletic fit. And as I mentioned as we started the show, you'll know that you've got a great school for your child if they can say, and you can say, my daughter or son will be ineligible or gets hurt, and she still will enjoy and have a happy 4 years of playing at the college level there. Then you can feel pretty good about that. So interest from the smaller programs, which was the last of our classic mistakes, even though early on everyone thinks they're going to be that big-time Division I player, don't preclude talking to or at least corresponding with the Division II and Division III programs, which gets back to take the time and send an email or just simply register with any school that sends information out to you, okay? Be courteous enough, and the parents really need to start teaching some good etiquette to some of their children. Hey, let's respond back. Thanks, but no thanks. Let's at least get our name in there, and not that you're going to be recruited to play there, but at some point if your skill sets are up or you decided to go to that school, you've been in their database before. And at some point, whether you're getting the help from professionals or you're doing it on your own, this gets back to now you're a junior or senior, let that school or let that targeted 8 to 10 schools know where you're going to play. It's the only way at some point, if you're looking for an athletic scholarship, the fact that you got good grades, which will be great, which means that you'll probably get into the school and be given the opportunity to get an academic scholarship, but they need to know where you're going to be and understand the number of emails, the hundreds of thousands of students that each year are vying for the attention of a Division I or even a Division II and III college program is off the charts. You need to make sure that you're extremely proactive, and when you do get your summer schedule, when you do get your high school sectional play schedule, you need to get that information via email. And at some point, if it's on your targeted list of 8 to 10, you pick up the phone. And as we said before, parents, don't make the calls for your teenage children. Your child should be able to pick up the phone. Hi, my name is Colin Weinert. I'm a junior at Warwick High School. I just sent over my summer schedule. and I just want to make sure, can you tell me what tournaments or showcases you're going to be at? And I look forward to having you possibly see me play this year. That's something that can be done all the time and is done the right way when parents are being proactive. To think that your son or daughter is going to be simply discovered, it's just not happening. It'll happen if your son or daughter is, the next Mariano Rivera or the next Jessica Mendoza. That 0.5%, when that skill talent is off the charts, they don't have to listen to any of the advice that I put forward today. But if your child is in that other 99 percentile, right, starting early, being realistic about it, and again, academics first, and done the right way, your son or daughter will have a great opportunity to continue to play at the college level.